Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sterling Live. My name is Caitlin Brower. I am Sterling's social media manager. Sterling Live is our weekly live series where we come to you live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, delivering just really great thought leadership content with our own employees, our partners, clients, all of the above. So I'm so happy to be back again this Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, and I have two great guests with me. Without wasting any more time, we'll definitely go ahead and get into it. So today we have, and she is no stranger to Sterling Live. I think this is your third or fourth time being here, Vincenza. But we have Vincenza Caruso-Valente. She is our general manager at Sterling for our retail, staffing, and franchise vertical. And we also have joining us today, Ellen Hahn, SVP of Marketing and Talent Acquisitions for Liveops. So thank you both for joining me today. I'm really excited. We're going to be talking about, so our audience knows, we're talking about current workforce trends and the impact on agents and contractors today. So before we get into it, I would love for Ellen and Vincenza to introduce themselves to our audience, just explain a little bit more about their roles, everything like that. So Ellen, I'll kick it over to you to start. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure thing. Thanks so much for having me. Ellen Hahn, Senior Vice President of Marketing and Talent Acquisition. My responsibilities at Liveops are twofold. On the marketing side, I am responsible for enterprise marketing and our brand raising awareness and consideration to support our enterprise efforts, as well as talent acquisition. And this is not necessarily the HR function at Liveops. We have somebody who manages that. This is more of the high volume talent acquisition that gets us our agent and our contractor base that supports our clients in taking customer care, customer contact, calls, email, chat from the comfort and safety of their own homes.
That's great. And thank you for that. And thank you for joining us again today. Vincenza, can you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Thanks, Caitlin. You gave me a great introduction and great to be back. As you mentioned, I'm the general manager of our retail staffing and franchise vertical here at Sterling. Essentially, we are assisting some of the largest organizations globally with their ever-changing needs from a hiring standpoint and enabling them to scale in what have been some very unprecedented times over the past year and a half to 2 years. It's been quite an incredible journey that we've taken with our clients, and look forward to talking with this audience today, along with Ellen, some of the trends that we've seen and takeaways that those that are on this call today can leverage perhaps as we continue to evolve in the ever-changing workforce.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And thank you for joining us again on Sterling Live. So as I said earlier, our topic today is current workforce trends and the impact on agents and contractors. I do want to let our audience know, if you are watching us live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube right now, if you have questions for Ellen or Vincenza throughout the show, please go ahead in the comment section across these three social media platforms and go ahead and type in your question there. And I will get them over to these two as I see fit throughout the show. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first area that I want to talk about, is within our title, current workforce trends. So that's the area I want to cover first with both of you. So Vincenza, this first question is for you. How would you describe the workforce transformation over the last 20 months?
It's a great question. As I mentioned, Caitlin, the global workforce was thrown into a whole new environment over the past 2 years, balancing shelter in place, along with maintaining a level of normalcy across not just their workforce, but their business as well, and how that dynamic shifted and changed so quickly and continued to change over time and continues to do so. So organizations have not only been forced to serve their clients in new ways, but they also need to serve their workforce in new ways as well. A great example of that is, I'll use an example from the retail space and how, the omni-channel dynamic that exists there, the shift of brick and mortar shopping, for example, quickly went away during the height of COVID. And we saw a whole new demand and increase for buying online and picking up in store. You now have a new client base that you need to serve, and you need to hire appropriately around those types of dynamics that you're forced to go into. Ultimately, the four themes that we saw prevailing amongst the consumer and the workforce was ultimately flexibility, overall balance, the risk versus safety, both mental and physical well-being. That's been, I believe, a critical element that we've seen, and ultimately resilience in both. So how do you ensure as an organization you're maintaining that resiliency that you need internally, providing that to your consumers, and ultimately to your candidates that are coming through the process, and ultimately those that are being hired as well. So just a few quick stats I thought would be great to share on worker sentiment. According to SIA, 35% of the workforce is represented by contingent workers. And since Q1 of last year, worker sentiment ultimately has shifted how and where they want to work. So the bottom line, they're rethinking their careers and what they expect to get out of work for themselves. And from our point of view, that sentiment has driven a complete shift in the workforce and a massive increase in contingent workforce demand. And as a result of soaring costs that have presented themselves, which I know Ellen can likely speak to in a bit, and how they can ultimately hire and retain their workers. So ultimately, the contingent workforce is really bringing an element of resiliency to organizations to make sure that they can meet their ever-changing hiring needs and filling the talent gaps that they have today. So ultimately, that contingent workforce ensures that the infrastructure and the goals that organizations need to meet don't fall prey to increased risk and continue to be sustainable and stable as the environment continues to change.
So a lot of transformation, and 20 months is not, that long of a time. So in a short amount of time too, and one of the bigger trends that we are seeing, as Vincenza just said, around that contingent workforce, that, shift in, certain organizations had to make for, their particular business, what they have to continue to deliver and everything like that. Keeping on the topic of current trends we're seeing in the workforce, Ellen, I'll come over to you and just ask, what are some current trends, that you're seeing?
Yeah, well, I wanted to follow on what Vincenza was saying, especially about retail and the omni-channel change and everything moving online, because we absolutely saw that. We saw that as everything moved online, and the omni-channel environment really actually accelerated and increased the contact center volume, because there were supply chain issues. And so as everybody kind of pushed online, people had more questions. And so we really saw that, and our volume increased. And so while everybody was going home, we were also kind of building our business at that time, because the call centers were busier, but yet the brick and mortars were sending folks home, and they weren't quite as prepared for it. So it was a very interesting dynamic early on in the pandemic to kind of see our business kind of really actually flourishing. And we were really thrilled at our ability to put people to work at a time when then in the retail brick and mortar, folks were losing their jobs. And we were saying, you have that experience, come over here. So it was a really nice time to be able to kind of put people to work and help improve their lives. What we're seeing for us is just an acceleration of what we saw for 20 years. I mean, we've been in this virtual business for 20 years, and we've seen this progression of people really wanting control over their lives, that work-life balance. And, what we're seeing here is just a massive acceleration of that. Some stats that we've seen is 4.3 million people quitting their jobs in August. That's 3% of the workforce.
Wow.
Yeah. 7% of that was in food service and accommodation service. Some of it in healthcare, restaurants as well. Some see this as a positive, like you said, Vincenza, is kind of like, hey, the extra unemployment insurance actually gave people that cushion to go out and kind of do something else. And people are just kind of in a way fed up. They're kind of like, I can do this now. The balance of power is kind of shifting. and it's kind of, they're calling it the long march towards freedom. It's like, I can do this now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading an article that was saying that for many, many years, people are actually holding on to jobs that really kind of weren't great jobs because wages weren't increasing. And now with the wages increasing, people can go out and kind of do what they want and get that new job. And this is actually could be a really good thing for the economy. But, you know, the pandemic really kind of downgraded work as the centerpiece of people's lives, which may be a good thing. So like this fundamental kind of shift in how people think about work has just been really quite interesting. And I think it's really interesting. And frankly, it's been a benefit to kind of our contingent model, people looking for more freedom and flexibility. And so, you know, it's been a benefit for our type of business and for Liveops in general.
Definitely. Nice little shout out on YouTube here, just saying that it's amazing that you were able to provide opportunities for people during the pandemic. So just a little shout out from YouTube there. So that is a friendly reminder. So if you are watching us live, you can comment, ask questions. Go ahead. I'll get them over to Ellen and Vincenza. So it's so interesting, you know, because we're talking about the shifts, you know, we're talking about what organizations had to do to be successful, to make sure their employees were successful, everything like that. But Ellen, you brought up a great point of how quickly though things have to, you know, they're accelerating and how fast. And that's a common theme that I'm seeing too. It's where changes have to be made, but these days they have to be made a lot quicker. So really happy you brought that up. I think both the stats that both of you had shared were very, very eye-opening for sure with how things are shifting, these current trends as well. Other trends that I'm seeing have to do with how organizations are actually bringing people on, how they're going after candidates, you know, really what they're doing. So Vincenza, I'll come to you first with this question I have, but I want both of you to answer it. What are organizations doing to attract candidates right now?
Yeah, I wanted to really hone in on the fact that the continual trend that has been just constant since the beginning of last year is that shift in engagement and, you know, what I'll call the revised digital journey that everybody is looking for. So now that individuals are really looking at their careers and shifting to potentially a remote work, complete change in career, how these candidates want to be engaged and how ultimately they become a contingent worker for an organization, or, you know, eventually an employee for an organization if it ever comes down to that. But in their you know, to Ellen's point, in their quest for flexibility in their work is, and how they want to engage and be engaged is critical. So to me, it was seeing that individuals want information faster, simpler, and in a continual way, and via preferred methods of engagement that get it to them that way. Texting versus emailing. You know, I feel like phone calls have become literally obsolete in today's world relative to how individuals want to be engaged. Zoom became the norm and the standard when it came to engaging. Teams also became, you know, another great way to connect with both your colleagues and ultimately with, you know, with external engagement as well. So to me, that piece, that revision and that digital journey and how we're using technology to communicate has been critical, not just in bringing candidates in, but ultimately once those candidates are in, how they're being engaged and being kept engaged by the organization that they're with. How are they upskilling them in a virtual way? How are they communicating culture and brand to them and making sure that they feel included? I'm sure, Ellen, you can speak to a ton of that, but that has been a huge trend that we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think that the things that are really keying in for people, because we hear a lot of people start talking about, well, people want flexibility, so we're going to go to part-time. And it's not about part-time, it's about right time. Because people are like, well, no, I don't want that, you know, 4-hour shift. What I want is I want to be able to take my kids to school or drop them off, and I have to go to this doctor's appointment, or I need to take care of my parents, or I want to go to this class, this fitness class, or do this, or I want to go take the dog for. They want that flexibility because, frankly, for the last 20 months they've kind of had it. So it's not. We're talking about it's not part-time; it's right time. And so the ability to kind of give people that flexibility, which in a lot of places is really difficult, but people are looking for that. They're looking for like, hey, I want to work on my schedule, which is right time, not part time. I think that that's critical. You talked about the work from home, and when organizations start talking about going back to the office 2 or 3 days a week, there is a lot of resistance to that. People are like, well, we've been successful for the last, 18, 20 months, completely virtual. Why do we need to go back? People have moved away from the cities, right? So their commutes are no longer that, the 20 minutes or half an hour or hopping on the subway. They're really long now, or they're not even in the same city. So, and then what you were talking about culture, people are just looking for an organization that has a purpose and that they live that purpose. And so purpose-led organizations, people are really attracted to those organizations. And I think that's critically important.
Yeah, everything that you said, around the flexibility, not part-time, it's, right time. I absolutely love that, the way of looking at it for sure. And I think it's helping organizations and or people applying for jobs to understand what does flexibility actually mean. And it can mean, different things for different people, different organizations. So it's that true definition of what it means. So I thought there was a lot of great stuff in that for sure. So we spoke about this a little bit so far. Let's get into it a little bit more, shifting to remote work. So Ellen, this first question is for you because I do want to remind our audience. So while not all companies were prepared to work remotely, Liveops has always operated that way. So can you share tips, guidance, success, for organizations to be successful when working remotely?
Yeah, I think organizations struggled with 3 things when, kind of sending everybody home. One was technology. I mean, imagine you have a massive workforce and all of a sudden you have to send them home. The first thing is technology. The second one is distance learning. And the third thing is community, right? So you have to send your workforce home and all of a sudden they've got all this equipment and they're trying to plug in and you have no idea what kind of secure environment people are working in. So I think that was the first thing that folks struggled with, and something that we had figured out a long time ago about kind of how to have workers, work from home or work remotely in a secure environment. And I think that that's something that if folks aren't out there with some kind of business disaster planning, that's the first thing that they probably kind of went, uh-oh, we need to figure this out. Hopefully they wrote it down and figured it out along the way, that they realized that they really needed to have a plan about. The second one is distance learning. And this is adult learning, because especially in the call center environment, what usually happened is you brought new classes in and everybody learned together in person. And now you have to figure out how to engage adult learners at a distance. And this is kind of, it's different. It's really different. And you want to kind of be doing simulations and role playing and you need to do that online. And so that's something that we've been doing. We have instructional designers and media designers so that when people are learning from a distance, they're really doing that in a very interactive way. And so that's something that is people need to be thinking about when they're trying to kind of onboard people and teach them about their brand and their culture and just how to do their job. How do you do that with adults at a distance? And thirdly is community. Our mantra is just because you work at home doesn't mean you have to work alone. So we have a group that's dedicated to our agent experience. So of course, our operations folks, they manage our agent community. But our agent experience team, they look holistically and horizontally at the agent experience, ensuring that we can create a community where the agents can tap in, help each other, ask questions, create communities for the clients in which they serve, so that they are bonding together pre-pandemic in where there was a density of agents that lived near each other. They would get together and have coffee together or create groups, mentor groups, and now they do that online as well, but they used to do it in person. So just the ability to create that community, and we have platforms that do that, create all kinds of challenges and rewards. So I think those are the three things that really are come to the top in terms of what people need to tend to for remote work.
Yeah, some great advice there for sure. And obviously, as I said earlier, your team has been doing this forever. So it's definitely advice for those watching right now to take on for sure and really understand how you can implement ideas like that into your organization and your processes. So for my next question, so Ellen, I'm going to stay with you here. And then Vincenza, I'll grab your thoughts on it after. But what are some current stats around remote work that support your current business model? And how can, this help other organizations as they look to potentially rethink their programs?
Yeah, I think there's a few out there. There's a Harvard Business Review article that said by 2027, 60% of the workforce will be some semblance of alternative. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty awesome. That 60% number. There was another stat that said from digital.com that said 32% of the people who left their jobs did so to start their own business. And this is what we have is, all of our agents are kind of their own business owners. Yeah. They are small business owners. They're starting their own business. And we're seeing this, and in our own data, when we started to hear and see companies struggling to hire people for roles, we really didn't see that, and we're not seeing that right now. Because we have what people are looking for. We have these really right time roles. People can work around their lives. They are their own bosses. They can build their businesses. If they want to work 20 hours a week, they can. If they want to work much more than that, they can. So I think our own data is telling us that this is what people are looking for because our applicant volume and our rosters are fulsome right now.
Yeah, I take Ellen, based on what you described, the theme I hear is enablement of the workforce. And, just a quick stat that we've been working off of that I think is really powerful, and it actually shows the massive shift that has actually happened in the workforce, that element of traditional work, what we're typically used to, that organizations have been heavily focused on investing on their full-time population versus their contingent population, has been a huge wake-up call, I believe. And the stats actually demonstrate that there is that need for shift in thought and investment. According to a recent study, 55% of workers will be job hunting in the next 12 months. The data is from April. And of those that are seeking new career and new job, 56% said flexibility in working hours remotely is important to them. So again, that whole traditional element of getting a job, working for an organization, being there 9 to 5, that element has really become an outdated, what I'll call strategy and focus. And it's how do we enable the way that people are thinking about their new way of how they want to live and work and give themselves that balance that they need. So, and then just another quick stat too, speaking to, to Ellen's heavy focus on the remote piece, obviously always for Liveops, but recent reports have also shown that in the next 4 years, the number of remote workers in the US will increase by 87% versus what we saw at the end of 2019, right before we went into COVID. So to me, that's a massive shift in the way that individuals are looking at how they work and what they want. To your point, Ellen, in your business, individuals are becoming their own bosses. They are literally running they are mini entrepreneurs. Yeah. And that's what people want. They want to be able to control and enable the way that they work and the way that they live and how they ultimately are successful at work. So I think it's, ultimately for me, it just demonstrates that that continued balance that organizations have to have in the shift in ensuring that they're enabling individuals. And at the same time, they're also ensuring that they're also keeping that element of risk, at the front end as well, is that ultimately individuals don't want to be in a physical environment anymore. And they prefer to be remotely working because it does keep them safer. And they do feel like they have more meaningful work for them. And ultimately, workers want to make sure that they're parts of organizations that support that desire to not put themselves at risk and ultimately be in a safe work environment.
It's interesting to think back to like 2-3 years ago when you knew I think we all knew maybe a handful of people that worked remotely, so to say. He works out of an office out of here, or he maybe goes to a hoteling office, something like that. Someone not true to an office space. It was like an anomaly. It didn't really happen. You didn't really think about it. And now it is the new normal. And that stat you had just said, like 87% increase, it's getting up there for sure. And I had also seen something recently that was very eye-opening, to where maybe in the past it was you get your job, this is your work, and you build your life around it. Now people want work and everything else built around their life. So they're establishing their life and what they want to do, and work kind of just falls into play because they're given these opportunities now where they can own it. They want to own everything. They want to be happy, and everything circles around their life. So that to me was very eye-opening. I saw that recently, and I think it definitely goes along with everything we've said so far on today's episode. So let's go to our next topic for this. I have a couple of questions here. So I want to we spoke about the candidates a little bit earlier. We talked about, what are, questions that they're asking, what are, companies doing to attract candidates. So getting candidates to start work quickly and safely. Most importantly, make sure we're getting in the door safely. So Ellen, my first question is for you. How can organizations get candidates through processes as fast as possible, even when volumes are very, very high?
Yeah, that's us for sure. Yeah, so I think one of the most important things is having an ATS that is first and foremost mobile first. You want that mobile experience. That's where everybody is, and you want that experience to be kind of self-contained and in that mobile environment as much as possible. I'll key off something that Vincenza was saying earlier about texting. It used to be that we used to text back and forth with our candidates we used to do about 135 texts a day. It's now threefold that. Oh, wow. So that texting back and forth with candidates because they have a lot of questions, it's pretty impressive, just the amount of texting we're doing back and forth each day. A lot of communication via social. We have a very active social presence, and folks have a lot of questions about our model because it is a little bit different. And so they have a lot of questions. So we have a very active social media manager who is, very, very keen on answering people's questions quickly. So I think that's really important to be out there. And then once they get in, is just setting expectations about kind of what's next in the journey, and getting them all the information that they need. So I think it's just super important to be kind of that communication, having it be as real time as possible, and making sure people know what's next in their journey is really important.
Well, I can attest to the, uptick in social media inquiries and questions. So yeah. We do get that a lot as well. So, and it's great to hear, you do have a very robust program and talking to a lot of these individuals. So, but yeah, all of that is great for sure. So I want to shift gears to, we're talking about, fast processes and getting in things quickly, but it really is important to look at the safety factor of it. So Vincenza, I do want both of your perspectives on this question, but Vincenza, I'm going to come to you first. Can you explain the importance of identity verification when it comes to bringing people on quickly and safely, but then also for, really selecting that perfect candidate?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I would say, as I'm sure we've seen in, just in the media and the world today, the number of data breaches and stolen identities is rising year after year. And there is a continued increase in risk that a candidate may be using stolen identity when applying for work, and that ultimately gets used to complete a background check. Just a quick stat here to kind of give a sense. According to a study that was done by HR.com of HR professionals, 1 in 5 of those that responded reported instances of candidate or worker identity fraud at their organization. And that's a really powerful stat when you think about it. So increases in data breaches and incidents like this ultimately means that, personally identifiable information is available for misuse in all the wrong ways. So, from, back to your question of the importance of identity, verifying that the candidates are who they say they are, from our point of view, is a critical first step in the hiring process. And because there's this common misconception that a background check automatically identifies a candidate's identity, and that is not the case. Background checks are accurate. Background checks are contingent on ensuring that the data that's being provided, full name, full date of birth, is accurate and complete. And whether intentional or accidental, keying errors can occur when a candidate is going through the process. Or, like we mentioned earlier, the increased likelihood that they may be using someone else's information and stolen information to get themselves through the process in a way where they ultimately become a bad actor, right? That individual is trying to get through, well knowing that they're not using the right information. So, from our point of view, identity is really designed at the end of the day to bridge that gap, to make sure that it's ensuring candidate data accuracy upfront. And then that is a downstream effect, right? Making sure that you've got that right information at the front. You have trust and ultimately confidence in the background that's being run, knowing that identity has been confirmed. And at the end of the day, it also gives that candidate the ability to carry and securely indicate that they have identity verification completed on themselves, in a digital wallet type way. So, from our point of view, with the remote worker population increasing, the incidence of data breaches occurring, this is a must from our point of view, and it's not a nice to have, it's a need to have for businesses to be successful in their hiring practices.
Very important for sure. Ellen, I would love your thoughts on this question.
Yeah, what she said.
It's the perfect answer.
It really is. I mean, because, in a remote environment, you really do need to kind of ensure people are who they say they are, right? So I don't think I could be any more articulate than that. So, and you need to have layers, right? It in multiple places in the organization that kind of check for this. So as they come in, and then even further down. So this is a multi-layer approach that we take. So I agree with Vincenza, and I think it's critical for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. We just got a shout out on LinkedIn. Thank you from Tracy Phillips. Excellent episode. Thank you all. Well, thank you for tuning in. And again, gentle reminder, if you are watching live, comment, questions, go ahead. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So we'll continue to keep this the most engaging conversation as we can. So I want to move into agent contractor experience. So I do have a couple of questions here. Given the unique, kind of point of view from Liveops, Ellen, these questions are all geared to you. Vincenza, please chime in though after any of these 3 questions if you do have any input, for sure. But the first question, Ellen, is once agents are selected, how can organizations keep them engaged and make them feel like they're a part of the community?
Yeah, I think it all starts, frankly, when they go into certification. That's when we start to kind of say, you are part of the Liveops Nation, which is our community of independent contractor agents. And that's when we start encouraging them. They are welcomed into the nation and onto the platform. And that's when we encourage them to start connecting with each other and connecting with not only their new agents that might be in their class, but also with existing more, I'll call them mature or less novice agents to kind of start learning from them. So it all starts there. And as they go into nesting and even further into production, we're trying to pair them up with mentors or study buddies during certification. And that platform, that Liveops Nation platform, and the mini nations are also serviced by what we call agent results advocates. And these are folks who are dedicated to the success of these small business owners, right? So they're offering tips and tricks and answering their questions, making sure that they know, we're teaching people how to fish, how to be successful in their own businesses, how to find the answers that they need so that they can successfully service the customers on the other end of this phone line, so that those customers can hear the smile on their faces. And that is all about making sure that they don't feel alone while they're at home. So all of these challenges that we put together, all of the additional certification that's available to these agents for free, allows them to continue to create that community as they go down their journey as these small business owners. And in that journey, we also offer them up additional opportunities to build their business as well.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Another really nice shout out from LinkedIn, just saying great thoughts and trends, and an emphasis on saying, it's not part-time, it's right time. So clearly that has resonated throughout the episode. I thought that was great as well. So something that I think is very important to a lot of new employees, a lot of, individuals on the job hunt right now, has to do with an organization's mission, vision, values, everything like that. So how important is an organization's mission, vision, values to a new agent or a contractor?
Yeah, I think it's critically important. Liveops, our purpose is to improve people's lives. And we look at that in our three constituents, our employees, our agents, and our clients. If you're in the customer service business, that's what you do day to day. You're improving somebody's life. You have somebody on the other end of the line, they have a question, they have an issue, they have a concern. And so these agents, they're dedicated to this. And so if we're not dedicated to improving their lives, it would be difficult for them to get on the phone every day to help other people. So I just wanted to, there's a couple quotes here from a few of our agents that I just kind of wanted to get out there.
Yes,
about
please.
How Liveops improves the agents' lives. So there was one gentleman named Jeffrey. He says, "I feel safe knowing that I can always turn on my computer and earn the funds I need as a person on disability. Hope is more important than anything." So, it's nice to hear that. Rebecca says, "My self-confidence and desire to learn and to do better every single day has soared, and I have never felt more appreciated." And then Sharon says, "Where would a 73-year-old woman be able to start her own business with such powerful support and such a wealth of top-notch clients to choose from? This is the answer I've been searching for." So, just some really nice stories from some of our agent community about kind of how Liveops helps improve their lives. And so I think it kind of speaks, each day we can go into our community platform and kind of get some agent sentiment. And we, on a quarterly basis, make it a point to go out and survey our agent community. And one of the questions we ask them, not only about kind of, are you satisfied, but are we improving your life? So we make sure that we are getting a pulse check on that every quarter. And so these are some of the comments that we get when we kind of say, how are we improving your life? So I think it's critically important for organizations to have a mission and to be living in and getting a pulse check from all of their constituents about how the organization is actually performing on that.
I loved those examples. They were so good. And really just, I know, we've been partnering for a little bit now, and we'll get into, Sterling and Liveops in a second. But every time I sit down with your team, we have conversations. There are so many like real-time stories that are shared and discussed. And it truly is remarkable and makes me feel so good that there is an organization out there like you guys that are truly living up to everything that you say. And people our lives are better because of it. So, and, it comes from us with that Sterling too. We are very, dedicated to our values and everything we believe in. So it makes me feel good that, these two companies are working together, and, we have a lot of good stuff to share.
Yeah, I think just to close on Ellen's point, because I feel it's such a relevant one, especially in today's time, is that as, again, individuals have assessed their lives and, how they, to your point, Caitlin, you mentioned how they want to structure their work around their life, not their life around their work, is that having a purpose, understanding the larger role that they play, knowing that their work is meaningful and that they're making a difference, not just for themselves, but for whomever they're serving, the client on the other end, is an incredibly important one. And that, to me, that shift just demonstrates that, ultimately, when people feel great and good about what they're doing, it translates incredibly well back for the business on ultimately their client base, their business model, and their strategy. So at the core, when you've got great people, you have no worry when it comes to your business being successful. So, and I know Ellen and team have built an incredibly successful business around exactly that.
Absolutely. So let's wrap up the show with one final section. And I just, kind of teased it a little bit about like 5 minutes ago. But I do want to talk about Sterling and Liveops. So my first question here, and, Vincenza, feel free to chime in. But Ellen, I do want you to provide just an overview of our relationship.
Sure. So we recently partnered with with Sterling. And the purpose of the relationship was the Sterling to help us with to background check all of our applicants who are providing services for the reasons we were just talking about. And one of the reasons why we chose Sterling as a partner was, frankly, the alignment of our values and our purpose. We really felt good about those conversations when we were talking to various providers. And their commitment to our partnership, or your commitment to our partnership, and your ability to flex around our business needs. Also, your kind of understanding and press for identity solutions as well as an important part of that. And so while the relationship is still fairly young, we've both been really leaning in together to identify, what's the next solution? How do we test? The flexibility has been really kind of quite good.
Yeah, that's great. So you did touch on it a little bit of how we were able to help Liveops and kind of, be a little bit flexible there. So Vincenza, how did Sterling help Liveops by building a program around their current needs as an organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. Back to Ellen's point, for us, it was really important, first and foremost, that our values were aligned, and we very much found that early on. From there, for us, it was really important as a team at Sterling to ensure that we were listening and hearing what the Liveops team had to say, what they were trying to solve for, and not solve for forever, but solving for right now, solving for 6 months from now, solving for a year from now. Ellen said it perfectly. It's been, the relationship is still relatively new, but we have been testing and learning because the environment has changed and shifted. And ultimately, what we heard from the Liveops team, which we've been continually partnering on, is ensuring that we have a tech first approach, which I believe that we do, and we've built that we continue to test and learn. It's candidate focused, and it optimizes not just their experience, but it also focuses on that critical element that Ellen mentioned. Demand is high, need is increasing. So how are we ensuring that we're focused on time to hire, And even as important, how are we making sure that candidates are converting in the process, making sure that those candidates are getting through the process and ultimately becoming agents and, active in the Liveops community. So for us, what we heard in those discussions, and we continue to hear, is that agility that needs to be part of the relationship and the partnership to make sure that they are creating a safe workplace, an inclusive workplace, and an incredibly flexible workplace. And all at the same time, to Ellen's point around our key focus on ensuring identity is a core element in the process, is ensuring that brand preservation and risk mitigation is a added layer to everything that we just discussed. And ultimately being able to show back to the prospective agents and ultimately those that do become agents that Liveops themselves is incredibly committed to creating that safe and inclusive workplace that provides that continual modern and fast and agile technology to help them be successful.
Ellen, do you have anything to add to those thoughts, the question?
Yeah, I think one of the things I wanted to stress is the speed. We had one of the things that Sterling has been able to do is kind of accelerate the process, because Sterling's ability to get us background checks completed has shrunk our time to get to onboard a new agent, I think by 2 or 3 days. So that's been really helpful.
Yeah, that is great. And I think a nice way to wrap up this part of the episode, and as we come to the end here, is a nice YouTube comment. Liveops and Sterling, a match made in heaven. So clearly a great partnership that we have going on here, as you both just explained to our audience. So I do love the commentary throughout this episode. It's been absolutely great. If you do want to leave a comment or ask a question, now is the time as we wrap up the show. Reminder, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, go ahead in the comment section, comments, questions, anything you'd like to say. And as we wait for any final thoughts to come in from our audience, I would like to grab some final thoughts from the two of you. So Vincenza, I'll start with you. Do you have any final thoughts for our audience?
I would say it's been a great dialogue discussion. Hopeful that those that have attended have gotten some meaningful insights into how to think about the ever-changing environment in the workforce and things to consider when you're engaging with candidates and thinking about the evolution of your business strategy and how your hiring model is a critical component to that, with the way that, like I said, not just ultimately organizations' consumer sentiments are changing, but ultimately what individuals are looking for and wanting to be part of their organizations.
That's great.
Yeah,
no,
I would
go
agree.
ahead.
Yeah. I mean, this has been a big topic. I mean, if you can't read a newspaper without seeing an article on a daily basis about the shifts in the workforce, labor markets, and just kind of is this a blip? Are we going to go back to normal? I think that there's just a fundamental shift that is accelerated. I don't think we are the genie is out of the bottle and is not going back in. And that if people are not kind of addressing these fundamental shifts in their workforces, in their organizations, that they're going to miss big time. And so I think it's important that people are kind of looking at all of these things and how they're accommodating in their companies.
Definitely. Very informative way to wrap up this episode for sure. So at this time, we don't have any further comments or questions across social media. So I do want to take this time and thank you both, Vincenza and Ellen, for joining me today on Sterling Live. It was a great episode, great conversation, coming in at about 47 minutes. I really appreciated every second I had with you two today. Thank you to our audience live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube right now. Thank you to our audience that is listening on demand. At any time, you go to sterlingcheck.com. You can also go to liveops.com. Visit us on our social media platforms, both organizations, if you have any questions or would want to learn more. But with that being said, again, Ellen and Vincenza, Vincenza, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you to our audience, and I will see you next time on Sterling Live.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Ellen.